Greetings, Nature Nerd here with our part 2 of the Wazoo Survival Gear Adventure Bracelet. If you remember from part 1, I went over the basics of what is in the bracelet, and we kind of looked at it from an outside point of view, which I will put down the link to that video in the description below, so you can view that. But today we're going to be tearing this thing apart and testing each item individually. But I do want to point out that I've been wearing this thing for about 3 weeks now. And one thing that I did mention in the first video is kind of how stiff it was when it first arrived. But now you can see that it's actually very easy to manipulate, and it's actually quite comfortable after 3 weeks of wearing it. The only thing I did notice is very nitpicky is that the Ranger bands, which are here on the buckles, got 3 of them. They tend to shift with day-to-day use. They just kind of slide up and down just a little bit. So I find myself every so often having to kind of readjust them. I'm kind of cheating it here, but they do slide just a little bit. So I do have to find myself readjusting them every so often. But that is about it as far as the daily use of this adventure bracelet. Like I said, I did find it quite comfortable, and it did not get in the way whatsoever. Although it did prompt some curious questions from my fellow office mates at work. So like I said, we're going to be tearing this thing apart and testing each item individually. Alright, so the first test we're going to do here is the whistle. See here we got the whistle, which is integrated into the buckle. And this thing is rated at about 100 decibels. So we should be able to hear loud and clear from quite a ways away. So we're here at the beautiful Palo Pinto Lake, which is right next to our campsite that we cleared out and serves as the Nature Nerd Lab. So my trusty assistant Kevin is off in the distance. He's probably a good, probably 100 yards off in the distance. You probably can't see him just because of the docks that are in the way. So I'm going to do a quick check-in with him and make sure that he's ready to listen. Kevin, come in.
I'm here.
Okay, whistle test coming up. All right, so get ready to get loud. Did that come in?
Yep.
All right, so as you can see, it took a couple tries for me to get a good airflow through it, just because as you can see here, you might not be able to because of the sun, but the hole for this is a little small, so it takes a couple tries to get a good airflow through it and get that nice loud whistle. But as you can see, with a couple quick tries, a couple quick bursts, I was able to get a good loud whistle through this. We're going to go a little further out and try from a greater distance. Okay, we're back with part 2 of the whistle test. So off in the distance, probably about 200 to 250 yards away across the lake, is my trusty assistant Kevin, who is going to be on call here to listen for the whistle and see if he can hear it from that distance, also from across the lake. Now, what's important to bear in mind here is that the lake creates noise, and which is going to kind of cancel out some of the whistle noise. So just bear that in mind, and we'll go ahead and give this a shot. And I'm going to go ahead and get in frame here, and that way you can go ahead and see me attempting to blow the whistle. Whistle test ready?
Whistle test ready.
Okay, here we go. You see, it's sometimes it's a little hard to get the right whistle here. How did that sound?
I heard 3 faint whistles.
Okay, so as you can see, he did hear them. They were a little faint, but they were still noticeable, which would still work in a survival situation, because if you have crews looking for you, even the faintest of a whistle sound would be enough to alert them to your presence. So this is still a great whistle to be used in a survival situation. And as I said, we even had the lake interfering with the noise of the lake and also absorbing that sound as it travels across. So even in a wooded area, I feel like this would be a great tool to have to signal for help. Okay, so now we're going to test the signal mirror, which is located on the underside of the buckle here. So for this test, we have, once again, our trusty assistant, Kevin, which is about 250 yards off in the distance across the lake. Got a nice, clean shot directly to him. And we're going to use the classic technique for when you use a signal mirror, which is kind of do a Vulcan live long and prosper thing with your hands here. Take your signal mirror, get the reflection of the sun, if I can get that there right on my hand, and so you can see where it's on your hand, and then you line up your target with your fingers. It's kind of like a viewfinder, and you shine it right in between there, and that way you know the beam is heading right to them. So let's make sure Kevin is ready. Signal mirror test ready?
Signal mirror test ready.
All right, let's give this a shot. All right, see that?
I saw 4 faint flashes and 3 bright flashes.
All right, so you saw a couple of faint flashes and a couple of very bright flashes, which is exactly what we wanted in this test. So as you can see, this is a very useful signal mirror, which will get you out of any situation as long as you have a good line of sight to your target. Now we're going to test the compass, which is in the middle here under this little lid here on the bracelet. And the way we're going to test this is we're going to compare it to a kind of a tried and true Kamenga Model 27. So this one is known for being one of the best compasses on the market. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare basically how they point north to from this one to this one. Now, as you know, we can't get them too close to each other because compasses, when they get close, start causing interference. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have my trusty assistant Kevin get the camera, put it over my shoulder, and we're going to test both these compasses to make sure they're pointing in the same direction. So Kevin, if you would, I'm going to turn around here. All right, so like I said, we can't get them too close to each other or they will cause interference, but as you can see, they're both pointing in the same direction. So this is an accurate compass, but just as a demonstration, let me show you what happens when they start getting too close to one another. See there, the compasses start moving in odd directions because the magnetic fields start messing with one another. So always bear that in mind, not to keep your compasses too close to another magnet or a big source of magnetic metal or like ferrous metals. It'll throw it off. So the next thing we're going to test out is the fishing line, the fishing hooks, and the sinker that comes included in the middle of the Adventure Bracelet. So the people at Wazoo were kind enough to send me a replacement tube, this is what is actually woven on the inside of the bracelet. So if you look at the bracelet here, this would be woven in this part of it right here. So they sent me this so I can just show you what it's like without having to disassemble the bracelet itself. So if you look really close, you can see in here we have our fishing hooks, we have our sinkers, we have our safety pins, and the rest of this is all fishing line in here. The tube itself can also be used as a straw, so if you need to get to water, it's in a very small puddle and you don't want to, can't dip your face in it, you just suck that out. Or if you're building a little fire and you're having a hard time getting it going, you can actually use it as a mini bellows and just blow and get air directly to the fire as you need it. So I'm going to take this apart and I'm going to assemble a quick little fishing line and show you how this all works. Okay, so I was able to finally open up that straw, and unfortunately the straw didn't exactly make it through the process. I don't know if there was something I was particularly doing wrong with opening the straw, but what I did is on each end there's these little tabs, and I used the knife that was included with the bracelet, and I sliced off the end there. but the cordage, and there's a lot of cordage that's in this, was a bit tight in the straw, so I couldn't just pull it straight out of the plastic. So what I did is I had to cut a little bit more and slice open it, kind of like a sausage, and I was finally able to get a hold of the cordage, pull it out, and what it ended up doing is stretching the plastic of the straw to kind of this unusable state. Like I said, I don't know if I'm doing something particularly wrong, but it didn't really come with any directions on how to open this up and preserve this straw piece, so I think that one's going to be a wash. The other piece that was a little frustrating is that, as you can see here, there's a lot of cordage that was wrapped into a very small space. As I pulled it out, it tended to get a little bit knotted up, and this is very thin. And when you have very thin cordage and you got it all tangled up, a little irritating to unknot it. But it didn't take me all that long, maybe about 10 minutes to get it all undone. But I did have some pretty gnarly knots going on in there. But see here, I got all the cordage unknotted, and I'm ready to go ahead and make my makeshift fishing rod. Okay, so I finished constructing the makeshift fishing line. So as you can see here, used both of the weights there, and went ahead and got one of the hooks attached right there. And just for this demonstration purposes, I went ahead and used all the cordage. But depending on your situation, you may not need all the cordage. You may only need to use half, a quarter, depending on where you are and where the fish are. Unfortunately, here at Palo Pinto Lake, there's not a whole lot of fish, so we're not going to catch anything. I'm not really looking forward to that. So we're going to test that. But see here, got my stick, got the other end of my line here attached to the other end, and this would be my makeshift fishing rod. So as you can see, the cordage and the hooks and the weights are actually very useful, and in a survival situation, fish are a great source of food, and they're also great because you can literally plant this line and just secure it down with rocks or whatever and leave it. You don't have to babysit it, and while you're off foraging or getting other sources of food, you can let the fishing rod just do its job on its own, and hopefully you come back and you have a fish dinner. All right, in the last test, we went ahead and cracked open the straw, which included our fishing line, fishing hooks, our weights, and also these two safety pins. Safety pins are extremely valuable in a survival situation because you can use them to mend your clothes, reattach cord. Like I say, I got this hat and the cord comes off of it. You can reattach that. You can also use the needle point if you get a splinter or anything else that you can use a needle for. You can use a safety pin for, with the exception of sewing. It's about the only thing it can't do as far as a normal needle can do. But they're good in a pinch for binding clothes back together. If you tear a hole in your tarp or any other piece of shelter, these are extremely valuable. So these come with two, and I'm sure you could probably come up with about 1,000 ways to use these in a survival situation.